Hi, Gal. Welcome and thanks for joining me here in Entrée Capital's Founder Spotlight series, where we highlight some of the inspiring founders in our portfolio and invite them to share some of the lessons that they've learned along the way. Are you ready to get started?
I am. Thank you so much, Faye, for inviting me.
Amazing, amazing. My pleasure. So let's first start with all of the basics. Give me kind of that elevator pitch in a sentence. What do you offer and to whom do you offer it?
Bria unleashes creativity. We create novel videos and images, all computer generated, dynamically, automatically, and at scale.
Wow. So you're saying that this is really, I guess, an element of taking AI and moving it to a space that it may not have been used before. You know, there must be a lot of complications when it comes to that, especially since this is a relatively newer space. Can you tell me a little bit about some of those stumbling blocks, whether they, were the technological stumbling blocks or even the broader stumbling blocks of you building a company? And I know you come from a little bit of a marketing background, so I'd also be interested in understanding a little bit about that. So what were the hard things going on and building a company as a founder?
You are correct. We embarked on a moonshot experiment to understand the entire visual domain in order to be able, down to the pixel level, understand it, and then to disassemble and assemble it back again. It's a moonshot experiment because eventually we would like to replace the camera altogether.
Wow.
We have numerous challenges. One of those are indeed the technological challenges. Generative AI is still perceived as an immature technology. Yair, my co-founder and CTO, we're truly committed to, rather than sitting in the garage for 2 years, we would like to generate impact, measurable impact for clients, and to do so now. And this is why we need to slice and dice and to find the bits and pieces that are ready for productization and for commercialization and to generate impact, true value to our customers, and to do so now.
So I want to back up a little bit, and you had mentioned that there are the technological issues. What are some of the ways that you're working to overcome those things, right? You know, like there's so many founders that are here that might have ideas of things, that might have ideas of some really fantastic innovation, but they also are worried or concerned about those technological roadblocks. So what are some things that you might have done to overcome those issues and those stumbling blocks that you'd mentioned?
I think that some of the ways to mitigate immaturity of technology is by finding the right partners, both in the investment community and the VC world, obviously, but also finding the right design partners to solve real problems. We do have our current best assumptions, but we need to validate them. And the only way to do so eventually is by generating impacts to end clients. So that would be the first way to mitigate it. And in parallel, when it comes to deep tech, to novel technology, there's also a need in our world to educate the market about the opportunities and also about how to mitigate concerns when it comes to ethical AI, generative AI, and the opportunities that they both unfold.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned educating the market. So that's a perfect connection to like kind of the next thing I want to discuss, which is that product market fit. So when you were building and coming into this space, what are some things or features that you've learned, either that you were shocked about or that you learned and needed to shift in order to find that product market fit and hone into exactly really what you wanted to do with this vision, creating things from scratch? And it's interesting, those of you that are not necessarily Hebrew speakers here that might be listening to this, Bria, there's a connection to that. Before you answer my question, could you maybe explain a little bit about the name Bria? Because that was when I first heard it. I was like, that's such a perfect name for a company that really creates things out of nothing. And I just thought it's cool. So if you want to just explain that real quick, and then we'll jump back into the product market fit.
So Bria in Hebrew stands for Bria, which eventually means creation. We enable creativity and creation, and to do so from scratch. This is what it is eventually all about for us.
That's amazing. Amazing. Okay, let's jump into the product market fit. So again, you talk about educating a market, right? Especially, with people maybe recognizing AI in the framework of cyber and the framework of other a little bit more non-daily use type of practical elements. So what did you do in order to find and recognize, I guess, that your AI technology could be very tachlis, very practical, very real for the everyday, whether it's marketer or teams or creative teams. How did you find and educate the space? And then what did you need to change in order to really make the fit to where you want it to fit?
So this is truly one of the biggest challenges that we face here at Bria, because when we talk about such a broad vision, and when we talk about the entire visual domains, think about all of the visual touch points. We are visual creatures. There are visuals everywhere. And luckily, my co-founder Yair and the team had built a very robust and generic platform. It can generate impact to so many verticals in so many use cases for so many prime prospects.
Could you give me some of them? What are some of those use cases and verticals?
We decided to generate impact at scale and to do so automatically. And the best way for us to do so is by generating impact on what we call the creative cycle, which means the creation cycles of visuals and videos. And our way to do so is by integrating to processes and to platforms, i.e., we're the world's first enterprise-grade generative AI platform. We're an API-first or SDK platform. And so we integrate either to digital content platforms, wherever there are templates that need to be enriched with visuals, whether these are platforms for website building, for presentation building, for email personalization, for video creation. We work with the world's largest image banks, with the world's largest creative agencies. And we can also generate impact in the e-commerce world and in the performance marketing domain.
Wow. So you had mentioned earlier, I think in one of your early answers, that you're hoping to, I guess, take over in the camera, the everyday camera, and replace almost the camera. That's a pretty big ask, and that's a pretty big thing to hope to do. And obviously, as you're building that and as you're trying to accomplish that, you must have had some things that were surprising. That maybe you realize people don't want to replace the camera, or maybe you've had pushback from people that you're trying to sell to that might say, listen, this is really nice and all, but it's just, not for us right now. I don't know. What are some things that might have surprised you while building your business? And let's go, both the good things that might surprise you and maybe some of the things that you're like, we need to rethink this. Because I just think, so many of these conversations that people have with founders are really all about like how fantastic it all was. And I think sometimes the most practical things for founders to listen to is to really understand like they're not the only ones struggling with certain things. So let's start with the good, because I like the good, but let's talk about surprises. Because that when you said you want to replace the camera, I love photography. So that really surprised me. I was like, wow, that's a very interesting mission.
So it's not a mission, it's just a demonstrator of potential capabilities. And to clarify, eventually visuals or photographs are here in order to do one of two main impacts, either to capture a memory, and this we do not intend to replace memories, or to convey a message. Here we can be a force multiplier. Just as an anecdote, my wife is a photographer. She's an artist. We're not replacing the camera,
okay.
but we can democratize the process of creativity. So conveying a visual message is no longer only to professional photographers or to digital creators or to professional graphic designers. We can remove all of the barriers, the complexity, the cost, the creative skills that some of us potentially lack. And now with a click of a mouse, we can generate impact at scale. Does this make sense?
Yeah, that actually really has it make sense. And I feel like there's probably so many ad agencies or big, massive conglomerates or companies or enterprises that just don't know how to even allocate resources or time to do their shoots for their products or their advertising. And I think this is actually quite brilliant. I come from a marketing background as well. So I'm, I very, very much understand. I think that's why I was so interested in this company and interested in having this conversation with you. Let's shift a little bit out of the space of Bria as a company. Let's talk about you as an individual, you as a founder and someone that has succeeded. You've been in this space for a little while now. It looks like you've been in the marketing spaces, you've been leading marketing teams, you've been working in companies that have successfully sold as a head of department. So tell me a little bit what it means to be an entrepreneur. And when it came to you building Bria, what's the best advice that you've ever received when it came to being a founder?
So for me, it was indeed important to solve problems that I personally faced and to make an impact in domains that I think that I understand in. And when I partnered with Yair, my co-founder, a computer vision rockstar, together it was clear to us that we want to make an impact in organizations via the visual domain. So it doesn't necessarily mean that that's the only way to build a business. I do not feel that I should necessarily be the one giving advices, but for me, it was important. For me, Bria is in the intersections of three great loves in my career path. I led technological computer vision, cutting edge projects. Indeed, I come from a marketing background, so I was exposed to the pains and opportunities in the creative, in the marketing, in the product world. And the last several companies I worked with for AI leading companies, and this completes the triangle of Bria for me. Going back to the best pieces of advice that perhaps I received that I should pass on. The first one is you should enjoy the journey. It is an incredible journey, but a bumpy one with ups and downs. Eventually, the driver should be intrinsic. It can't be just about the money or the potential money. Statistically, the odds are against us. We should enjoy. We should have fun with team members. Second, we should optimize for partnerships, true partnerships, which brings me to the partnerships and the vote of confidence that we luckily received from Entrée very early along the path. If we will, or entrepreneurs are lucky to choose carefully the partners to that journey that can generate added value, that can push back, that can challenge us co-founders, I think that this, for Bria at least, is one of the potential secret sauces for potential success.
That's amazing. We're running short on time, so I'm going to ask you a few last questions, just real quick off the top of your head. Any books, movies, or podcasts that you'd recommend that you say, you know, that really inspired me or that changed my way of thinking, or just watch it, it's good?
I'm a great fan of Reid Hoffman and the Masters of Scale podcast. I think it's a very user-friendly, digestible, short, but also very inspiring and eye-opening to hear really the leading VCs and entrepreneurs and businesses and to be inspired from.
I will definitely make sure to check it out. And closing up, you had touched on it in your earlier answer about the advice that you would give to people, but tell me a little bit more about why Entrée.
Both Yair and myself had met with Rana Chituv, and we know him from previous life. And when we started the incubation process of Bria, we knew that Entrée has the potential to become the strategic partners, the force multipliers, the very strong shoulder under the stretcher in a very lengthy journey, the scale, the reputation, the resources, but mainly the state of mind, the founders mentality that understand founders, that have the experience and the benchmark, not only the reputation, the fact that Entrée is also a fund of funds. It means that not only automatically we received access to portfolio companies, amazing co-founders that assisted us along the way, from Blue White Robotics and Alfie, from the co-founders of Monday, and the list goes on and on. But whenever we wanted to generate impact, to validate hypothesis, to speak with a potential client, even if it's not within the Entrée portfolio, within 2 phone calls and sometimes less than 24 hours, someone somehow via the network, other affiliated funds, it's amazing the number of doors that could open just by having Entrée as partners.
Well, thank you. And that's a good way for me to end and for us to end. But is there any last things that you want to add that you think is important to share or give our listeners?
So Bria is very rapidly growing. So if you're enthusiastic about building a company with a broad vision in the visual domain, if you like computer vision, generative adversarial network, or you are a data scientist, a full stack, or a backend engineer, we're hiring. Kindly reach out to me via LinkedIn or via our website. If you're an enterprise or an organization that wants to unleash cutting edge technology, you're also welcome to try and test our very unique platform. And thank you so much, Faye, for inviting us and for allowing me to tell the Bria story.
Yeah, thank you for coming. I really enjoyed this conversation. I'm excited to play around a little bit. And I don't know if I can go and look at the website and see actually what you're doing. I looked a little bit and I saw some of the overviews. I'd love to, get early access and play around with it so I can really see. As a marketer, I think this is really the future of the work that everyone will be doing. And I think it'll just make everyone's lives so much more productive, efficient, and really effective. So I'm excited to see where this goes. I'm excited to hopefully watch the journey. And I, thank you so much for joining me today.
Deeply appreciate it. Thank you so much, Faye.
Pleasure.
Bye-bye.